Hello everyone. Today we'll be reading music using both of our hands. And to do this, we'll be looking at pages 15 and 16 from Bradford Warner's Classical Guitar Method, the 2014 edition. But before we get started, let's make sure we've got everything we need. First and foremost, let's make sure we're there. So be sure to warm up. What I'm referring to is doing left hand and right hand warm-ups, similar to what we see in the playing tasks 2 through 6. But additionally, let's make sure we warm up our brain. To the right here, we have page 15 from the Warner Classical Guitar Method. Find it now if you can, but feel free to follow along with the video. All right, first, let's make sure we know what we're learning. On this page, we'll be focusing on learning notes, specifically the C, D, E notes, as well as the G and B notes we learned previously on page 10 and 12. All right, so we've got the subject matter down. Where's it at? Well, conveniently, Mr. Warner puts the location of the notes in conjunction with what left-hand finger to use and underneath each note, and we can see it there between the brackets. Have we seen any of this before? Well, G and B, yeah, we did. We saw that on page 10 and 12 when we were playing those exercises. And the D note, well, we kind of saw that before in the previous video when we found the open strings on the staff on page 8. All right. Next question, how do you play it? Well, as mentioned previously, between those orange brackets, Mr. Warner indicates where the note is at, as well as what left-hand finger we have to use. When it says open, that means we don't need any left-hand finger at all. It's just the string itself. But there's some other information there as well. These numbers, if you remember, are the string numbers. And above the notes, we see the left-hand fingers. So for the C, we use our third finger, which if you remember is our fretting hand ring finger. So if you play left-handed, that would be your right hand finger. But for those who play right-handed, where your right hand is the one hitting and strumming the strings, then that is your left hand ring finger. Next question is, how do we play the note? Well, as mentioned earlier, between the orange brackets, we can find the string number, the fret that the note is located at, if there is a fret that is located at, as well as the fretting hand finger. Remember, open means it's an open string, so no fretting hand finger is needed. So if you play right-handed, your left hand can just hang out, and vice versa if you play left-handed. But there's other information as well. These numbers indicate the string number. Anytime you have a number in a circle, that is the string. Meanwhile, anytime you see a number without a circle, we're talking about our fretting hand finger, often labeled the left-hand fingering because typically people play right-handed. But if you play left-handed, whenever you see that, it's referring to your fretting hand, which for you as a left-handed player would be your right hand. All right, so we have reviewed the information. Now let's find the notes in the song below. This is the preparation for prelude number 1. So let's start with the first note. And if we notice, yeah, it's pretty much the same as the last two notes. Well, this note is C. Okay, cool. So we've got 4 C's and then it ends with 2 C's. Okay, great. Let's find the next measure where we see a different note. Okay, that looks the same as the second to last measure of that line. That's the open D string. Well, so that leaves one measure left for this line, and that looks like this note up here, E. Okay, so we had C in the first measure, we have D in the second, E in the third, returns to D in the fourth measure, and then ends with a C in the last measure of that line. Okay, cool. What about the next line? So we see these two notes here, which look very similar to the first two notes there, which also look very similar to those notes that follow. Well, we've seen these before from the studies on page 10 and 12 of this same book, and it's these notes up here, G and B. All right, so I feel pretty solid on this. I'm just going to go ahead and quiz myself. So I'm going to begin by just saying the note names. All right, that's a C, and I would play that on the 5th string, 3rd fret. Cool. That is a D. That's the open 4th string. Cool. That is an E. That is on the 4th string, 2nd fret, and I'll be using my 2nd finger. That's a G. I've seen that before. And so I think it's about this time that I'm feeling comfortable. I'm going to try playing the notes. All right, so let's find that G. Okay, I'm going to put my index finger on G as he indicates. All right, G, got it. How about this note? Okay, that's the B. I've seen that before. I'm going to use my M finger, which he indicates. M finger is our playing hand. Okay, got that. That is C. I'm going to use my ring finger fretting hand with my thumb, as he indicates there with the right hand. For me, right hand, my playing hand. Okay, I got a C. It's another C. Just played that. Cool. Oh, that is a D. I don't need to use my fretting hand. Another D. Cool. All right, and an E. That's my middle finger of the fretting hand, or the second finger, with my playing hand playing a thumb. Okay, cool. After reviewing the notes and quizzing myself, I feel like I'm ready to start playing. But what I'm going to do first is just play the right hand. All right, so I'm going to play the right hand for the first line there. It's just the thumb the way through. It starts on the 5th string, goes to the 4th, stays on 4th, 4th, and ends on the 5th. All right, so I'm just going to play open strings. Pretty easy. I'll do the next line, just right hand. Oh, hey, that's actually the song. That's kind of cool. So I'm done with that line. Now I'm going to try playing one measure at a time. So I'm going to try to play this measure but finish into the next measure at the downbeat. So it would look like this. I'd be playing C, 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 D. Cool, I'm gonna do that again. Change the tone. C, 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 D. Okay, let's try another. E, E, D. Pretty straightforward. Let's keep going. Okay. D, 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 E. Cool. One more measure, and this will cover pretty much the whole song. D, 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 C. And if I hear something that I kind of want to play around with, like I kind of buzz my finger, for example, I'm being a perfectionist, I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to try to play a little bit slower. D, 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 C. And that way I muted it with my playing hand instead of the fretting. Just something I wanted to do. Okay, now that I've practiced all of it, I can play the whole song. So third measure. We already did the second line? Cool. Let's move on. So now let's take a look at page 16. This is the following page. And it's the same thing you see on the right of your screen. Similar to how we prepared before, let's just look at the score. And before even learning any notes, let's just look at the patterns. Starting with, do we see any repetitions? Well, looking at this, actually, yeah, I see a lot. For example, this kind of arcing 3 notes repeats not only in the next measure or the rest of the line, but also skipping a line down, it looks exactly the same. Okay. And looks very similar to the second line, just subtly different with the first note. And if I continue to look at it, that second line looks very similar to the 4th line and the 6th line. Okay. And it's kind of similar to the 5th line too. Okay, so there's this pattern of 3 notes, and it kind of goes upward. Except for the last measure. That's where the pattern ends. Okay, got it. Well, as mentioned before, we saw that some of the lines look similar. The second line looks a lot like the 4th line, looks a lot like the 6th line. Okay, cool. Oh, hey, yeah, there's one more thing down there. In the very last line, the second measure looks similar. Okay, cool. Now, if I look at the first line, I can see that, yep, it repeats the whole time. And it looks exactly like the 3rd line and looks similar to the last line. Though, as mentioned before, this measure is different, and so is the ending. But it's the same note as it starts in the piece. This is the only line that has a beginning note that's different than all the other notes. Anything else? Well, what makes it look so similar? Well, if I look at this closely, I see that these two notes look the same as those two notes, look the same as those two notes, as those two. Okay, wait a sec. Yeah. So there's a lot of things repeating here. So now what we're going to do is find what those two notes are and find them at the earliest point in the song. And we're going to write down anything we need to make sure we know how to play those notes. But here's the deal. We're only going to do it once. If you do it any more than that, you're just reading your own handwriting, and that's just inefficient. So let's do this. Let's find the second and third notes, because if we get that, then we have 2/3 of the piece, right? So let's take a look and see what we see. Oh yeah, I recognize this. This is the open third string. So what I'll do is I'll write in the string number and the fret, and it's open, so it's a 0 above, because there's no fingers needed for the fretting hand, and a 3 below, because it's the third string in a circle. And then the string next to it, I remember, is B. So again, similar thing, 0 because it's just the open string, and it's the second string. So now let's find the first note of the second line. That's the first time we see this note. And I bring it up because it's the open fourth string. Okay, great. So now we've got most of the song learned, because this line, if you remember, repeats itself 3 times entirely, plus 1 measure in the last line. All right, we got another important note though. It's the first note of the song, which we remember is C on the 5th string, 3rd fret. I threw that in there because I just wanted to remember it. And then we're going to use the 3rd finger, which is our ring finger. Well, that's kind of nice that the fingering and the fret are the same, but remember, that number without the circle is your finger, not necessarily the fret. All right, one last note. Where is it at? That's right, it's the 5th line, first note. And this is an E on the 2nd fret of the 4th string. And I'm going to use my second finger here. In the end, we only have 5 notes to learn. And notice I write in the information that I want. You could also write in the letter name. It's not a bad thing to practice. If you can't remember what the letter names are, then just go ahead and give yourself a clue. Write that in once, and anytime you forget it, just look back to it. It'll really help in reading music. All right, so now let's try to start to play. Let's just do the right hand first. And I'm going to start just with the second line because it's all open strings. And it's the 4th string, 3rd, and 2nd. So it's just 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. What's the right hand fingering? Okay, it's P-I-M, P-I-M. So I'm going to give it a shot. P-I-M, 3, 4. Cool. Now let's do the line before. That was the 5th string. But I'm not going to use my left hand. I'm just doing the right. So if I were using my left hand, I'd have it up here. But instead, I'm just going to play the open 5th string just to practice the right hand only. So it's... And now I'm going to move on to the 2nd string, which sounds the same, right? Because we don't use the left hand. Okay, and then the 3rd line is just the 1st line over. So my thumb moved back to the 5th string. Not using the left hand right now. Okay, kind of repetitive. Got it. 5th line, again, not using the left hand, so it'll sound like the 4th line. 6th line, as we said, is the same as the 4th and 2nd. Now the last line. This is... That's probably the most important thing to practice because your thumb switches between 2 strings. So let's do it again, just right hand. Obviously, we will be using our left hand when we actually play the whole song, but we're just trying to get the right hand down for right now. So the C is on the 5th string, so my thumb's going to be on the 5th string. D is the open 4th string, obviously. Then it goes back to that C again. We're talking about our thumb, right? Back to the C again on the 5th string, and then it ends on the 5th string. So it works like this. I recommend practicing just the parts that you really need work on instead of having to go back and start over. It'll help you a lot. This has to do with that interleaved practice. If everything always starts from the same point, if you forget, it's not very strong memory. You want a memory that can know where you're at any given time. So switch it up. Practice the part you need to practice. Practice it backwards. There's all kinds of ways to practice. Speaking of all kinds of ways to practice, let's do the quizzes. So let's try just playing a measure. Let's try the first measure. Cool. But if you remember, let's play into the next measure. So I'm going to play the first measure. Great, that's pretty easy. All right, I'm going to play the first measure of the second line into the next measure. Cool. I'm going to play the last measure of that line. All right, that's the same, but I'm going to play it into the next line. So last measure, second line, into the third line. Cool. All right. How about, the fifth line? I haven't done that yet. Let's do that first measure. All right, now that I've played all the measures, I'm going to try playing the measures a little bit later on. I'm going to play the third measure of the fourth line. Okay, how about the third measure of the third line? All right, got it. How about the third measure of the fifth? Okay, how about the second measure of the last line? That one's a little different. Cool. Now, play one entire line and then into the downbeat of the following. So I'm going to do the first line. Cool. All right, now I'm going to do the second line. Into the downbeat of the next. Oh, hey, and I already know how to do that one. That's cool. I'm going to skip down to the fifth line there. Into the sixth. Oh, that makes me realize, why don't I practice going into the fifth line from the fourth? So, fourth line down. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Into E, the fifth line. Cool. You know what line I need to practice? That's that last line. That's the trickiest one. So let's try it. That's right. I go to the fourth string with the right hand thumb, or the playing hand thumb, I should say. More universal. I'm going to do that again. So I've got a C in the first measure, D in the second, C in the third, and then it ends with another C in the fourth measure of that last line. So let's do it again. Last line, C, D, C, C. All right, I'm feeling pretty confident now. I'm just going to give this thing a shot. One thing to mention, that RIT means retardando. That means to slow down or to die out. And that's what I did. If you notice, I played around with dynamics just to kind of give it some direction. It's kind of like, you can think about it, the first 8 bars is a phrase with kind of a little comma in between. Then you could think of the next 8 bars or the next 2 lines as a response. And then you've got this kind of exciting 5th line. That could be the climax of the story, and then it kind of fades out. Just something to think about and play around with. Okay, great. Well, have fun with this. Let me know if you have any questions, and enjoy.